Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide divorce valuation and mediation services in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we will discuss active and passive appreciation of separate property in divorce with the esteemed Dr. Ashok Abbott, who is an associate professor of finance at West Virginia University. He is the founder of Business Valuation, Inc., where he provides value by determining statistical significance, validating economic models, and providing rigorous empirical analytical support. So basically, just a super expert at research and all things valuation. If we kind of go back to still defining it, because I want to get to some of your research, I want to get to some of all of the things that you have done. But I think there's still, just an understanding, a base understanding of what is active appreciation in an asset or business, because those are a lot of words that people may not totally understand.
That's right. And see, the way the concept has developed is that even though states have different interpretations, but the fundamental principle seems to be shared across at least all the equitable distribution states. That is, that they are making a distinction between appreciation occurring as a result of efforts or resources provided by a spouse versus the appreciation resulting from, even though the different states call it by a different name, but they call them economic factors or changes in economic conditions, or Carolinas, they say inflation and other factors. Mm-hmm. So they are talking about what Turner, that's the basic text that you have in passive appreciation. He calls them market forces. The impact of market forces versus the efforts or resources of the spouses.
Yeah, and another kind of way to look at it is, if I'm working in the business, am I doing something that's making that value increase? Or is it, like we've had some businesses that are just so large that like your impact may be very tiny little bit. And so there's more market things going on. And that might lead us to kind of the passive appreciation in an asset or business has to do more with the market or outside factors, right?
See, it's very interesting. You brought out an excellent point. The largest single claim in a marital distribution, a check for almost $1 billion, right? Do you remember what case it was?
I don't remember what case it was.
Okay. This is the petroleum company. And they had fracking that they developed. In fact, the technique was developed. And the company grew from about $50 million to a lot of billions, okay, over the marriage. And of course, when the marriage fell apart, that increase had to be distributed. And obviously, the outspouse lawyers, they said, not a problem at all. So you're starting from 50, you're going to 10. So it's a growth. And initially, the value is almost negligible, right? Because compared to the ending value. So let's just write half of the company. And you're done. And at that point, obviously, the in-spouse had good support. So what they did was they said, okay, let's look at a petroleum company. Let's look at what constitutes value of that company. And they ran a similar kind of analysis. And basically, the number came out to be that it's largely market determined. You have 1 billion barrels of oil sitting in ground. whether the oil is worth $15 a barrel or $220 a barrel, gets decided outside this company. And the petroleum company's value changes with that. And so ultimately, it became, the court decided that it was a 20% was active and 80% was passive. So the $2 billion that it would be, the appreciation would be worth, was split equally. And the check for $1 billion was written.
That's crazy.
That's how it works.
Well, and this is really a story that kind of leads us into like why we even care about whether a business has active appreciation or passive when we're going through a divorce, because some of that has to do with how that appreciation or that change in value is either directly related to one of the spouses,
Right.
or not.
Right. It's a question of marital resources, and those resources can be financial or can be efforts. So your labor is a resource.
Mhm.
The fundamental concept is that the marriage is an economic partnership. Both individuals that bring their endowment into the business, they increase that value over time through either effort or by resources that they brought in. And then at the end, if and when that dissolves, then the fruits of that labor have to be divided. The fruits of those resources have to be divided. So that is where we run into this need for active versus passive analysis.
Well, and I think that you'll also read a lot of cases, or you'll get to know cases in your state that the out spouse, we call, they're the non-business owner spouse, is saying, well, I worked in the business at one point, or I answered the phones, or I, did some administrative things. And that's usually where they're trying to get to some participation in the value, right?
Right. See, and depending on the state, now I'm in West Virginia, here, you come across cases where baking cookies for the party, taking the kids to sports practice, is all effort. Now remember, that is very valuable contribution that the out spouse is making, whether it is by directly working there or by making time available for the in spouse to be there. So that is where now you have again segued very nicely into the next area, where you are looking at really not being two pieces, but three pieces of this appreciation. The passive appreciation, that is from the market forces. Also, the appreciation in excess of what happens with market forces, is it coming from one of the spouses, or as you were talking about a large business where there's a large workforce, you may have the CEO as one of the spouses, but you have other senior level managers that are working and that are contributing to that growth. So that's what we need to be looking at, is what is attributable to individual spouses as part of the active growth. Now, active growth is something which is very hard to measure, quantify, or empirically establish.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what we end up doing is we look at the passive, which is very much quantifiable. So essentially you claim passive and you give away what you cannot claim as passive is active. And then the question becomes, of that active, how much is active from the participant, one of the two spouses?